My name is Peter Mullowney from Newport. I'm Secretary of the Newport Historical Society, and I'd like to welcome you all here today to the programme about Finding Grace. I didn't realise we'd started a little bit late, so we'll probably finish a little bit late. Any of you that want to go and see United play in Brentford, more than welcome to leave early. You probably all got the flyer about the conference, but I'll just read a little bit here from what was Grace O'Malley, 1530 to 1603. The Pirate Queen is one of the most important figures in Irish history and a source of great national pride. Her many exploits are both legendary and inspirational, with successive generations of people worldwide becoming enthralled with her life history and its legacy. Grace's biographer, Anne Chambers, describes her as an accomplished mariner, a fearless leader by land and by sea, a shrewd political tactician, a successful independent businesswoman, a ruthless plunderer, a mercenary, a rebel, the protective matriarch of her family and her tribe, and above all else, a woman who broke the mould and refused to allow the barriers placed in her path, either by society or by nature, deter her from her quest. I just finished reading the biography that Anne wrote of Grace O'Malley, the 40th anniversary edition, last night, and I'd read it when it first came out, or just shortly after it first came out, and there was a lot of the stuff I'd forgotten in the meantime, but she certainly was an amazing woman, and I'm looking forward to hearing Anne's talk about her at probably 3:30. The times are, like we say, a little bit off. The O'Malley Clan Association is conducting research into Grace's genetic heritage in a bid to identify the genetic signature of her immediate forebears. We hope that soon O'Malleys from all over the world will be able to find out how closely they may be related to her. In so doing, we aim to highlight the importance of genetic heritage, attract the O'Malley diaspora to their ancestral home, and draw further attention to the incredible human being that was Grace O'Malley. So I looked at some of the YouTubes that Dr. Maurice Gleeson, who's going to talk about, he's a leading genetic genealogist, will present the findings so far of this groundbreaking project. He will explain how multiple O'Malleys have combined their historical connections to Grace with DNA analysis to reveal the complex story of O'Malley descent. And so I hadn't known that much about genetic DNA. I heard people talking about it. And if you Google Morris on YouTube, you'll find a lot of videos he's done, and I find them very interesting. But what I found also was that some of you are O'Malleys and some of you are not O'Malleys. And, O'Malley is part of your background, but it's also very applicable that what he shows on his videos, and I presume it will be similar today, would apply to a lot of other families. So it's an interesting thing to look at. So you may have noticed, those of you that would have connections to Newport, there was a book came out in May, Newport 300, the first 200 years. And I edited that book, and it's selling very well. This is Cormac O'Malley. Cormac was one of the chieftains of the O'Malley clan, I think about 15 years ago. And I've got to know Cormac very well over the last couple of years. We had another book that came out about the War of Independence in West Mayo. And Cormac's father, Ernie O'Malley, did a lot of interviews in the 40s and 50s with people that had been involved in the War of Independence, and he called them the Mel Will Talk to Me. Now, there was one came out about 10 years ago in Mayo, but there was also another 12 interviews that he did that weren't recorded in that book, and I was hoping to use them as part of the book that we did on West Mayo, and Cormac had said that maybe it should be published separately. Another thing that we're doing is the folklore of the Clew Bay Islands. Now, some of you may know that Ernie O'Malley, after the War of Independence and the Civil War, went off to the United States, and when he came back, he settled after a while, deciding where he was going to live, in Burrishoe Lodge on the road between Newport and Mullowney. And part of the thing that he did there was he had this boat, and he went and visited all the islands, and he interviewed the islanders about folklore. So there's a whole bunch of other diaries that he kept that I'm working on with Cormac at the moment to find out what people said about the islands. In 1901, there was 21 inhabited islands in Clew Bay. Some of them were close to Westport than they were to Newport. Some of them were in the parish of Kilmena. But on the 4 islands that had O'Malley's on them, Collinmore, Collinbeg, Islandmore and Inishcottle. So there's some O'Malley's will figure in this book on the folklore of Clew Bay. The book that we did on the War of Independence, we had a index at the back that indexed all the names that were mentioned, and in the War of Independence there were 35 O'Malley names, different O'Malleys, and in the Newport 300 book there were 65 O'Malley names in it. So any of you that have connections with O'Malley's in Newport, have a look at that book and see. Sheila Malloy wrote a book. I bought this back in the 80s, so it's probably out of print, but I did look on ABE Books last week and there was 2 copies for sale, and it's a really interesting book if any of you have any connections with the O'Malley family, or families I should say. Here are all the versions that she was able to find in archives, and I was just talking to Anne Chambers at lunch and she said she'd found 28, so that's 6 by 5 is 30, so she beat you by 2. Okay, and then I decided what I'd do is a bit of an introduction. I'd look at the 1911 census and see how many Malleys and O'Malleys there were, and then you can see some of them didn't have the O in 1911. Now this might be something to do because it was before independence and the way, but people have changed the way that they have their name. And I've also seen on births, deaths and marriages that births were often registered to a family with 3 kids, and each one spelt a different way depending on the curate's way that he thought the name should be spelled. Most people couldn't read and write, so it was up to the curate to decide how to spell it. Okay, and then this is in where they were distributed, and most of them were in O'Malley's were in Mayo, and then there was another bunch in Limerick, and we'll hear a little bit later on about the connection between the Limerick O'Malleys and the Mayo O'Malleys. And the Malleys, the same, there were more of them in Mayo. And then Melias now, there wasn't that many Melias in, do you want to see that one there before? Sorry. If you give me your email, I'll send you on the whole lot if you're interested, like, you know. The Melias. Okay, and then I thought what I'd do is I'd look at the ones in Mayo and find out which townland they were in, and I got all this mapping software downloaded on the computer and said Mayo's in O'Malley, and found that John Grenham had already done it, and that saved me a couple of days' work. But John Grenham's website is really good, and it's a very reasonable price. I think it's €9 for a month that you can look at it, and you can put in all your, all your surnames going back 5 or 6 generations. You can see where they all are, and you probably know quite a lot of where they are from your own genealogy. But around Clew Bay, they're definitely the O'Malleys are there. Okay, so that's all I have to say, and I'd just like to introduce Dr. Maurice Gleeson. He's a psychiatrist and pharmaceutical physician. Oh, I hadn't read that before. I was having lunch with him, and he was probably analysing me for the last half an hour. So he may be saying things out this talk that I didn't expect. He's also a pharmaceutical physician as well as a genetic genealogist. He's administrator of several surname DNA projects, including O'Malley, Gleeson, Spearin and Farrell projects, among others. He's an international speaker and organises DNA lectures for Genetic Genealogy Ireland in Dublin, Belfast, and Who Do You Think You Are in the UK. He also works with adoptees and with people of unknown parentage, and has appeared on Irish TV as a consultant for the TV series Adoption Stories. He authors several blogs, e.g. DNA and Family Tree Research, and is a regular contributor to genealogical magazines. His YouTube videos, as I just said, on genetic genealogy are very popular, and he was the noted Genetic Genealogist of the Year 2015. I wonder what's happened in the last 7 years. Why he has in the surname DNA Journal and Superstar Genealogist of Ireland in 2016. So I'd like to put your hands together and welcome Dr. Morris Pearson.